Let's talk about Dortmund. Um, I feel horrible because a few weeks ago I wrote an article saying that Dortmund are definitely out of the Champions League race, and I'm certain now that they're actually going to sneak into the top four, Stefan.
Yeah, so just for anyone who's keeping tally, Manu said that Hamburg were definitely going to go up, and they've basically lost every game since then. And he said that Dortmund were not going to finish the top four, and they've somehow miraculously keep winning games over and over again.
But not
Um,
only that, everyone else is losing.
and everyone's losing. Yeah, exactly. The whole thing's just kind of falling into place for them. Yeah, this was just another kind of bonkers game from Dortmund. Hoffenheim, poor Hoffenheim, really gave. Well, I don't want to say a good account of themselves because they defended like kindergarten children, but in terms of attack, I thought they did tremendously well. You know, they threatened Dortmund over and over again. They scored equaliser in the 90th minute, thinking that would be that, and then of course there was the I guess we can call it controversy over the third goal and the potential kind of foul with Ballman. I think we both agree it wasn't a foul, but I think we still have to call it, say there was some controversy over it.
Mm.
And the manner in which that kind of happened. And I think over the course of the 90 minutes, you can clearly see why Hoffenheim have struggled as they have this season. But also, as I said a full time, why Dortmund have kind of been stuck in mid-table for much of the season because it was a game in which Dortmund really should have won this game quite comfortably. I don't want to kind of take such a negative angle to this, but it really riled me up from the get go because even when we saw the lineups come in and we saw Emre Can back in the team, we saw Julian Brandt back in the team. He dropped Carney Chukwuemeka, despite the fact he's been fantastic. Brought Jamie Gittins back in, and I know Brandt scored a great goal, but I actually thought for the most part of the game he was pretty poor. I thought Emre Can was at fault for at least one of the goals, and then poor Gittins did very little before he got brought off. I think at half time or just after half time. And I was kind of saying on Blue Sky before kickoff, I was like, it feels like Niko Kovac is just hitting refresh on his squad. It's like on Football Manager when you get to the tactics screen to pick your team for the upcoming game, and you just ask assistant to pick team, and like every week they pick a different squad. That's kind of how it feels like with Kovac right now. And I get that he's trying to figure out this team, and I guess he's trying to figure out which players he wants to keep for next season. And I had some people say, well, maybe he's trying to rotate the squads. And I thought, well, why? They've only got one game to play a week for the next 3 or 4 weeks, and then they're done for the summer. I know they've got the Club World Cup, but yeah.
Mm.
All that really matters is like basically 4 cup finals for Dortmund. And despite that, he keeps kind of shaking things up. And you could argue that, it ended up working quite well for him because Chukwuemeka then comes on and does well when he comes on as a substitute. But fundamentally, and I was really close to writing a newsletter about this actually before I decided to do some in Hamburg, and it feels like he's now at least the third head coach, if not more since before that, who really struggles to get Dortmund to play like a top team. And by that I mean a team akin to Leverkusen or Bayern who dominate games from
Mm.
start to finish with the intention of pinning teams back, try and score as many goals as they can, and keep the ball in the opposing half of the entire match. It's not just a style of football, it's not just a tactic. It's what's expected of the best teams in the league. And I'm struggling to remember the last time Dortmund had a manager. You might have to go all the way back to Tuchel when he was trying to implement a kind of possession style football, where a Dortmund team wanted to be one of those teams. It feels like Dortmund and their DNA, or this idea that they have to be playing this exciting counter-attacking football, and that means the idea of constricting a football match and taking all the life out of it to win it goes against the very concept of Dortmund. And if that's the case, then fine. If that's what the fans want, fine. But it felt like it's games like this one, which I do appreciate they still won, so it's maybe a moot point. But it's games like this one where I think if they just knew how, maybe it's a case of having better players, or maybe it's just a case of Kovac not kind of getting his tactics across yet. But they just look like a team that are slightly better than the rest of the mid-table teams still at this point. And and like I said, I think that's maybe why they have been where they have been for much of the season. They'll probably end up finishing top four, and
Yeah.
all of this will be forgotten, and nothing will change in the summer. And we'll be back here next season, but it just feels like Dortmund aren't a top four side. It doesn't feel like they're one of the better teams in the Bundesliga. It just feels like they're better than all the mid-table teams, if that makes sense.
No, I think that's exactly what's going on here, right? I mean, they are very lucky that Mainz and Freiburg really do not belong in the top four. And I say that with all the respect that I have for the work that they have done. This season in particular, both Freiburg and Mainz are great stories. But at the end of the day, they're not top four clubs, right? And so they're lucky that the two of them are not being consistent enough just because they're not good enough to finish in the top four. And then they're also very fortunate that in Leipzig, a legitimate top four team decided this year that they well, I don't know what they are. We talked about them in the previous show, so they got absolutely demolished by Frankfurt. We're going to touch on that game in a moment, but so like they're lucky in a sense that everyone around them is kind of just falling by the wayside and opening this door to finish in the top four after the all. And I mean this game in particular was bonkers, and they were lucky. I think the Carney Baumann situation. I agree with you. I don't think that's a foul. But I've seen it given, right? I mean, there's plenty of referees around the world, not just in the Bundesliga, that protect goalkeepers in that situation. And I personally actually think I'm going to go as far as saying that was maybe a goalkeeper mistake. Because if you come for it, you told as a goalkeeper from the very youngest age, if you come for it, you have it. You have to have it. And he doesn't. And does he get really hurt in this play? Yeah, 100%. But look, we see this also go the other way many times where the goalkeeper plays the ball and absolutely destroys an attacker, and there's no penalty given because the goalkeeper plays the ball, right? Like, you can't have it both ways. The goalkeeper is technically only protected in the 6-yard box, not in the 18-yard box. This is in the laws of the game. And I look at the ticker here. Did you see that in the kicker, the ticker that they always have, Team Dr. Kern was sent off in the 98th minute, and they actually haven't noted down, I guess because he was so mad at what happened to Oliver Baumann. And again, I understand the emotions and I understand the situation that Hoffenheim are in. They're battling relegation, right? And that relegation race is still wide open. But I actually thought, that was one of those situations where Dortmund rightfully were a goal given, but I've seen it also go the other way. So, a little bit of luck involved as well. And that is kind of what they're riding right now. And my fear is that at the end of the year, when they finish fourth, Hans-Joachim Watzke, he will sit down and say like, "Wow, look, we've once again finished in the top four, and we have the Club World Cup now, and we're gonna get 100 million euros from that because we're gonna obviously win it. We're gonna be back in the Champions League, getting 40 million from that. Why would we change our business model? We're making the maximum amount of money." And then you and I are going to sit here again next year because they can't challenge for the title and complain about them for 34 match days, Stefan.
Yeah, and I think I'm not mistaken, Vasquez already kind of came out and said that Kovac will be staying next season, which is interesting claim to make already, considering the fact they haven't got back into the top four yet. But yeah, you're right, and it's. I mean, we touched on this, I think, with Bayern actually at the start of the early in the season. Actually, in fact, it was right after the Champions League defeat when they got knocked out from Inter. I kind of said in one of the bonus shows in the reaction show that I kind of hope that Bayern's hierarchy learn from the manner in which they got knocked out of the Champions League to make the changes in the transfer window to make sure it doesn't happen again. I.e., identify the problems in that team, fix them, buy better players, sell the players that don't work. And build a squad that's actually capable of challenging for the Champions League, which is what Bayern should be doing. And Dortmund should be doing the same thing, obviously to a lesser degree, not to build a squad to challenge for the Champions League, but they should be looking to build a squad to be top four minimum. But they should also be looking at how Leverkusen have done what they've done over the last couple of years and try to emulate that. And yeah, I mean, this is really kind of putting a negative spin on finishing the top four. But as I said, you could very easily see a situation where they do sneak into the top four. They finally get in there. They're in the Club World Cup. Money's flowing in. They sell Gittins for, 40, 50 million euros. And it all just kind of rumble. Yeah, and it just kind of all just rumbles on as it was, and. I guess that's the conundrum for Dortmund. They're capable of just kind of not much changing, and that's a really sad thing. Unfortunately, not much has changed at Dortmund in the last 7 or 8 years at all, really. And there doesn't seem to be a great need to make that change.